Next up, we want to talk about the in-demand preliminary hearing that is going to get started tomorrow for singer and TikTok star David Anthony Burke is facing first-degree murder and child abuse charges in the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. This highly anticipated multi-day preliminary hearing is scheduled to begin to determine if there is sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. And for more on this, we want to bring in our next guest to help break it all down. Tre Lovell, attorney and legal analyst. Great to have you on, Tre. And this, of course, is going to set the stage here tomorrow for the preliminary hearing. And Tre, I always wonder for these preliminary hearings, how does the prosecution really juggle and handle showcasing some of the evidence, but not also showcasing your full hand to the defense?
Yeah, they really have to decide how much to put on because the burden is much lower for the preliminary hearing. It's really, they just have to show probable cause that a crime was committed and that David did it. You know, they don't have the beyond a reasonable doubt threshold that they do for an actual trial. So they don't have to show all of their cards, but they do have to do enough to ensure that they do get that probable cause. And as a result, they're going to, be, lay on the side of caution and make sure they put enough evidence, which is why I think it's going to be, certainly a number of days. This is going to be a long preliminary hearing. They're going to put on a lot of the evidence. They're not going to show their full hand, but it's going to be substantial. And the defense is going to have a chance at challenging it.
And Tre, I also wonder, too, about these preliminary hearings, why it has to be so drawn out with these multiple days. How come when the judge hears these facts of the case, why he can't say, okay, you know what, I've heard enough. Yeah, there is probable cause.
Preliminary hearings normally are much shorter. They're a few hours, maybe a day or so, depending on the case. This is a high-profile case. Hochman is all over this, and there is a lot of evidence that has been trickling out through the briefs and through what we're hearing. So, they're going to need the time to go through all of that. And I think the prosecution wants to make sure that they get it across that there's a lot of evidence here for all of their claims. Remember, this is first degree with special circumstances, could result in the death penalty, life without the possibility of parole, the most serious consequences. And they don't want to get any lesser charges. They want to go for the maximum. So they're going to need the time to put on that evidence. The judge is not going to shortcut it. The judge is going to allow whatever time that they need. And then you're going to have the challenges on the defense. And that's going to take a while, too. They're going to challenge everything. So that's normally they don't take this long. But for a high profile case like this and what's at stake, they're going to take their time and they're going to put on a substantial amount of evidence. So you will need the days to do that.
And this was a case where, let's face it, the district attorney as well as the police investigation, it took a long time to get to this moment right now.
It certainly did. I mean, the investigation that they did was substantial. And I mean, the car was discovered in September. They didn't arrest him until April of the following year. And, there were three grand juries were impaneled, and a lot of evidence handling, everything from DNA to video to GPS to text messages, digital, things like that. So they took their time. They wanted to make sure they had everything in place. They basically wanted to have their case in place before they even arrested him. And so it wasn't a quick arrest. They took their time. And it was important that they did that to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed when it comes time to a preliminary hearing like this, and they're all ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people looking at this case, just wondering, in the world that we live in, especially everything digital and everything that is sent through text message, video, whatever. And then you have the case here of the victim that is in the trunk of this Tesla decomposed. It's the Tesla of the suspect. I think a lot of people saying, okay, why did it take so long to get this person arrested?
Well, absolutely. I mean, first of all, nowadays, law enforcement has so many different tools they have to prove a case. through the online, through the digital, through the cell phone, through the GPS, through all of that type of stuff, and the forensics and the science. And so they have a lot of tools at their belt. But the facts of this case, are still puzzling. I mean, why was the remains left in the car? Why wasn't something done with that? It was just being parked out there. Obviously, going to be flagged at some point and be towed in if nobody picked it up. So the underlying facts are very questionable as to how that happened. But in this case, they just wanted to make sure, and they didn't want any early arrests. They wanted to have everything in line. And so I think they took a little bit longer than normal, but I think they needed to, in light of all of the evidence that ultimately they've amassed. I mean, from what we've heard, there is a lot of evidence in this case, which makes for a much more powerful prosecution. So there is a strategy to wait. There's no rush to do this. And then once the time is right, then they make the arrest and you're ready to go.
And so, of course, the prosecution has what we were thinking is a lot of evidence. How will the defense try to poke some holes in this, where it seems like at this point a very uphill battle?
Yeah. So when you look at the evidence, the first thought is, "Wow, how are they going to challenge this? How are they going to beat this?" There's so much evidence, but there's actually a lot of defenses and moves the defense can make. First of all, they can challenge, who actually committed the crime. Maybe he was only involved in trying to hide the crime or the mutilation of the human remains and didn't actually kill him. If facts, a scenario like that came about, we're looking at 3 to 6 years for aiding and abetting the cover-up of a crime and mutilation of human remains versus the death penalty, or life without the possibility of parole. Or let's say, he did kill her, but maybe it wasn't first degree. Maybe he wanted to talk. They got in an argument. It was heat of passion, voluntary manslaughter. He killed her without the premeditation. That's 3 to 11 years. So once again, 3 to 11 years versus death. So there's a lot of things that the defense can do here. It doesn't have to get an acquittal or not guilty, but it can mitigate the charges. It can take away the special circumstances, take away the first degree, maybe get to second degree, maybe get to voluntary manslaughter. So they will be going at that too, because we have to remember the prosecution has the burden. It has to prove premeditation. It has to prove special circumstances, and which is not easy. And so they're going to be looking at trying to dismember the case and mitigate as best they can.
And it seems like the sticking point here for this case is the alleged sexual relationship between the victim and the suspect. And it seems like what the prosecution is going to showcase is that David Burke had all of the reasons to kill this victim, because she was going to say, hey, I'm going to tell people about this relationship. I was underage. This is what happened. And then this is how it all unfolded.
Yeah. So, all of the elements are here for murder. He has means, opportunity, motive. They have evidence for all of that, which makes it a very compelling case. And it's going to make it a big challenge for the defense. But that's where the magic of defense lawyers come in. They challenge all that evidence. They challenge the chain of custody. They challenge the way evidence was collected. They challenge the DNA testing. They challenge whether or not it was lawfully collected. They challenge the experts. They challenge the credibility of the witnesses, their memories, their things like this. So, you got to remember, it's not necessarily them proving he's innocent, but it's the prosecution proving he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And that means the defense just has to chip away and create that reasonable doubt. And they can do that through their cross-examination and their challenging of the evidence and creating the slightest suspicion that, hey, maybe, this person isn't telling the truth, or maybe it wasn't collected properly, maybe it wasn't preserved. And so there's a lot of ways that the defense can challenge it. So that's kind of the way to look at it. But it is certainly a compelling case.
Yeah, it really, really is. It's going to be a fascinating look to see how it all goes starting tomorrow. Tre Lovell, thanks so much for giving us a great preview of what to expect tomorrow and the coming week. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. All right, everyone, we'll take another 2-minute break. Stay right here with us. More to come in just moments on Live Now.